Hey guys, it's Kenz.
And Shell.
Welcome back to the Effortless Podcast.
Wow.
Was
I
that
feel like
good?
that should be the new intro.
Probably not. How's it going?
Good. Are you asking me or all the...
I'm asking you. Well, how's life going?
Life's good. I feel like a lot of changes have happened actually recently for me.
Oh, like what?
Like I got a couple new jobs. Yeah.
Is OnlyFans one of them?
You know what? The amount of times I've
Contemplated.
contemplated an OnlyFans account.
You'd kill it on the OF, but stay true to who you are.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Speaking of, that's one of your things that you have written down. Okay, what are we talking about today?
Yeah. Okay, I thought it would be funny to kind of... Well, I feel like we have a couple different topics, but this almost leads us into them.
Okay.
I feel like growing up, there's a lot of sayings that older people say to you,
Uh-huh.
and you're like, you hear it, and you're like,
yeah.
okay, and you hear it again, you're like, okay, but it doesn't like resonate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we're older and wiser,
You're a lot older than me.
6 months older than Ken, it like makes sense, obviously.
Or you understand,
then you
like,
understand it, and obviously, then you're like, wow, I wish I would have understood, or like,
Yeah. Like you're like, okay, I understand what that means now.
yeah.
So what are some of those that, because we're talking, I know we've already talked a decent amount about like identity and like who you are and all the things, but kind of like what we were talking about earlier, how you feel like since all that you've been through and that you've like kind of reclaimed your identity, I feel like you had some good like insights or more things that you wanted to talk about on that topic.
Yeah, or I just feel like so much of society's problems, or like if you hear about somebody who's like even like a motivational speaker, or I don't know, just like different ways to like better yourself, so much of it so much around it is about identity.
And,
like I think that's like
who you are.
Yeah, that's just like a huge thing right now. And even the girl that you follow on Instagram, who you really enjoy her podcast that she just started, and a lot of her like a hard season in her life, it was wrapped around her identity that got lost. And I think it's so easy nowadays, even more so probably, to lose your identity as a young individual because of social media, and just kind of like the new social norms,
which are messed up.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I feel like I'm scared for like my daughters.
Yeah, I think
so
it has a lot.
I'm not letting them get phones till they're 20.
I know it. It's like tempting to just like keep them so sheltered,
but you can't. But that's where it's like you have to pour in like confidence into them and instill things in them that they like,
so that somebody can't strip that from them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So some of your sayings here. Why did you put this in front of me?
Well, because I don't know where mine.
They are your quotes.
For example, I feel like these ones are kind of hand in hand, but I feel like multiple people, and now I see this and I'm like, okay, I know what this means now. Never lose yourself or stay true to who you are. Like those ones. I mean, I feel like you see it on like, they're like very typical, like on a mug or something, or I don't know, like such like mundane quotes now. Yeah. Or like live, laugh, love, how that's just so overdone. It's almost like
vibes only.
Yeah,
although I believe that.
Yeah. But these ones I feel like are just so, they're just so relevant. And I feel like the whole losing your identity thing is so real right now.
Yeah.
It's so prevalent in so many aspects of the world.
So in your experience, since you kind of went through an identity crisis,
and people do crazy stuff in an identity crisis.
Yeah.
I feel like they don't really understand what is happening.
So part of that, though, I think is fair. I mean, like, yes, I think I agree. People do crazy stuff. But I think part of it is like so true that if you lose your identity, like on your journey to refine it, it's almost like you're so like lost and don't know what to do, that you're like, I don't even know who I am. So then you do kind of crazy things. So you're like, is this who I am? And then like typically you're like, no, it's not. And that's like mistakes are made along the way, or like things that you would maybe regret. But also like you can't really be faulted for like you're literally trying to figure out who you are. And sometimes I feel like in that process, you do questionable things. Not you specifically.
Right.
Well, you did specifically, but but that's normal. Or like that's kind of goes along with finding yourself in a lot of cases. And then typically you hope that you come out on top like you've done, where you kind of are like, okay, I know who I am. I know my identity and like where that lies. And then
you kind of like flourish from there.
Yeah. And it's like, it's all part of your like journey or whatever, your process and your healing to like get to the point where you're like, okay, now I know who I am. I made questionable decisions that's not me. And so I think that's like, it's okay, you know?
Yeah. And it's all part of, I am like such a strong believer if everything happens for a reason, for sure. And now that I'm like coming out on the other side, I feel like, oh, like obviously all of that happened for a reason. And thankfully, I mean, I didn't do anything like extreme to like
put yourself in like harm or like
or I mean like
ruin your life.
Yeah. But I mean, like sometimes that is what happens, and then really bad decisions are made, and it's like you go the other way.
Yeah.
And instead of like learning and like refining yourself, it's like you just.
Or it's kind of like once you hit the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to find who I am. It's almost like a F it all. I mean, not everybody, but I feel like it would be easy to have like a F this. I'm just going to like do me, figure it out. I don't even care. Like. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And you almost feel like you have nothing to lose.
Right. Or you're like, I've already lost it all. Like, what else can I,
because whatever was your identity has been stripped. So you feel like I don't have anything to lose.
So what do you feel like your biggest steps as far as like coming back to finding your identity? Or like if for somebody that is in an identity crisis, what would be your like tips, or how did you re-find yourself, and things that you learned along the way, or like things that you're like, I wish I wouldn't have done that, or it took me doing this to get here?
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Wow, that's a good question. I feel like
interviewer.
I think, well, first of all, it's like you're in, like you feel like your head is like spinning, especially for me. Mine is like kind of not specialized, but mine was obviously I had a lot of other things going on.
Can I interrupt really quick? I feel like there's almost like two different types of loss of identity. Like in your case, I feel like it was somebody who stripped it away based on like how they treated you and like what they expected out of you, and having like a false standard for like what they thought were like holding you to. But then there's also like the identity crisis of somebody like a mom who they might be confident in who they are and like think they know who they are, but then they have kids and then they are like taking care of everybody else, that they forget about their identity kind of, and then have to like relearn, okay, who am I? What do I like? What do I have to offer besides like taking care of everybody?
Yes.
So I feel like you're taking it from the standpoint of
one perspective. Yeah. But I feel like in both, that's like a super good point, because I feel like that's so true. I just remember like asking myself every day, I'm like, what do I like? Like, what makes me happy? Like, I was thinking like, all I want to do is like be happy again. And I'm like, what makes me happy? And I honestly couldn't answer that question for a long time. But I knew that like having the right people around you was number one for the support. So like, I mean, literally I would obviously like, we talked every day, all day.
Yeah.
So like having like a positive, like somebody that you know, it wants the best for you, and you know that.
Yeah.
Like
it's not like a question of like, are they like looking out for me? It's like, 100%.
Yeah, 100% that they are like super supportive. So like having a support person. And then for me, religion was a huge one, because I feel like I kind of lost my way in like Christianity in a way. Like I never like didn't believe, but I like wasn't acting as I
you were like
believed.
So wrapped up in this person that was like taking all of your energy and like kind of burning you dry of like
kind of like my beliefs or whatever. Yeah, just kind of like conform to him
because that's like what he conditioned you to.
Yeah,
I guess.
So like And it's like, I never like fully lost it, but I wasn't like acting out my beliefs, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
And so like literally going back to that. And then if there is, and I'm pretty high on like counseling or therapy, no matter what, to like, even like when you were talking about the perspective of a mom or something, like I think that there's positives that comes out of therapy as well, because they are able to like put names to how you're feeling, which I feel like is a very validating feeling. And that's part of healing or like getting over that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like just literally going back to your core and being like, who am I? Like
starting.
Like literally like, who am I in like the smallest aspects, not what you do, not who you hang around, but like you yourself. Like, what do you like? What makes you happy? If tomorrow you could literally do anything you wanted, no matter like money situation or like having to go to work or something, like what actually makes you happy? So just like going all the way back to
and sometimes that takes trial and error of like, I think I like going to baseball games.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, wait, I actually hate going to baseball games. It was just because this person liked it. So I liked it because
of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, I feel like.
Yeah. Anyways, I was just thinking about that, about like, because I think I saw one of these quotes, like, never lose yourself, stay true to who you are. And
it's like a lot of times a process of like, it's not just like overnight you lose yourself. It's like,
it is
time.
Yeah, for sure. And even when I like was starting the process of kind of getting out of my situation, your dad had said one of these to me too. I want to say something about not losing myself or like being confident in who I am or something like that. And I feel like you just want to like tell your girls, or you know, I just want to be like, oh my gosh, don't let anybody strip you.
Like, the scary part is like one person can do that. Or like if they're in high school and they have a bad boyfriend who a douchebag and starts like telling them things, or even another girl, like it can be anybody that like, you know, messes with their confidence and stuff, which I do think it's very important, especially this day and age, to like teach your girls, especially how, and then like from a boy standpoint, like teach your son, like, you treat girls right, bro.
How do you feel like as a mom? Like, I feel like we've talked about this, like your parents did such a good job. Like you are like so confident in who you are and stuff. Like, how do you feel like that is done as a parent?
I mean, like from my own personal experience, some things that stand out to me that I feel like it's important that I'll like pass, or, you know, like try to work pass down to my kids. Just things that like I remember. I feel like even the simplest things of like telling, like I feel like my dad, and I do think it is a huge thing, like dad to daughter. I think does
for sure
make more of a difference almost than like mom to daughter, but I think both are important. Just like saying how beautiful you are, like you're like so smart, like just literally like uplifting words of affirmation and not like tearing them down, or like I'm disappointed. Like I feel like being like always being like, I'm so proud of you, like you've worked so hard. I feel like those are all things that I heard all the time. I'm so proud of you, which let's be real, I like was at Sylvan Learning Center. I struggled through school. Like school was not my
I was at
learning. My mom would get me Baskin Robbins milkshakes.
But after each one, she was probably like, I'm so proud of you.
It was a struggle. But like, my point is like, I was not by any means like a great student, or like I was like chemistry, as we talked about. I've failed chemistry multiple times. Like I struggled. School was not easy for me, especially like reading and math. But like never, like no, through all, like sometimes I'd be like, okay, because like they'd be like, we're so proud of you, and I'm like, okay, but like I suck. But still, it's like never
they
like
always found like a positive.
Or like or like we're so proud of you for working so hard towards this, or like you've really been working hard, even if I like sucked like I did at these things, but it still like made me a more confident person. And even I'm like, I'm still like great, even though I suck at reading and math. Like I never felt like, I'm just like such a piece of shit, you know? So I think that, but then along with that, I feel like they were very good about just like, you know, telling us how beautiful we all were, or like we were, and stuff like that, as far as just like building that confidence. And then I feel like there's something else I was going to say. Another thing that you have down here that I think was a huge thing that my parents really like instilled in us was just being like leaders, not followers. And I think naturally some people have that in them more than others. But I do think that that's another thing to like, if you can teach your kids to be leaders, then like when you're leading, then you're just not going to lose who you are.
Yeah.
If you're the one that people are following, like don't be the one that follows others. And I think that's another way to like make sure you stay super confident. And another way to like teach your kids to be confident is to really like teach them what it means to be a leader and like attributes of that, as far as just like really staying true to who you are and like treating others kindly and things that you like, being who you naturally are and like being a positive, uplifting person. And ultimately, like people want to follow that.
Right. I was going to say, yeah.
So I think it's important to teach that versus like, we never tear people down. We're never going to like say rude things. Like these people might have different beliefs than us, but that's okay. Like we still treat them equally and stuff like that. I think is really important. And I think that like being a leader, I think is huge in identity.
I agree.
Because if you're a follower, then like naturally, like your identity is shifting. And it's kind of like if you're doing something to just be cool or fit in with a group of people, it's probably not necessarily what you love doing or like who you naturally are. That's my 2 cents.
That's good. It's like being your kid's biggest hype man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Do you feel like it's different son versus daughter? I mean, obviously it is.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
I
as
do.
far as like instilling, because I feel like whenever we think of like lost confidence, we think of it in a girl, which makes sense because
it's usually like they don't think they're pretty enough or like stuff like that, where guys, it's like they care less about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely, I feel like boys can, I feel like if guys like aren't confident, then they're just like douchebags. You know what I mean though?
Like they make up for it.
Yeah, you kind of just like being jerks.
Kind of mean.
Yeah, or like whatever that looks like. But I have not very much experience with boys. So I feel like I do think Greg is good at that. He's even like pulled out his PLU binder from football because it has like all of, you know. But I feel like he's very aware of like boys.
I feel like Greg is very, but even like, I mean, he's even so aware of like, I mean, some girl stuff, obviously.
No, he is
learning.
Yeah.
But as far as like saying certain things in front of the girls or like doing, I mean, like you have to catch me sometimes because I'll be like,
I call you out when you're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, Shelly, we love ourselves. We look great. You look great.
There was something the other day. We were talking about something and I made some,
but that is a
comment, but
big thing, like talking highly of yourself as well.
Right.
Like, because the girls catch on to that, especially.
They totally do. And they're just
and you don't want them
everything you say.
Yeah. And we're like the standard that they feel like so we're really encouraging of they are beautiful just the way they are.
They are.
And
yes, they are.
I know. And so are
obviously.
we.
Yes, so are we.
Yeah. But then I do think there's a fine line too, because I do think that they're, especially for girls, like obviously you want them to like feel like they're perfect the way they are and like beautiful and stuff. But then again, and like I feel like I'm a very confident I feel like I grew up confident. I still am. But at the same time, like I love getting Botox.
Well, yeah.
And I'm like, to me, I'm like, just because you want to do something to like that, for instance, doesn't mean that you're like not confident. It's more just like, oh, if that makes you feel better about yourself or whatever, like how you look, then that's fine. Like
I think it totally depends on the reasoning that you're doing it.
Yes.
Are you getting Botox because you think your husband thinks you look better with Botox?
Right.
Or are you
doing it because no? He's like, don't.
Right. But I feel like if you're like
hold off the wrinkles for a little bit. That's all I'm trying to do.
It's kind of like more about the reasoning that you do it. Like if you're gonna like look good, feel good, play good, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Then like get
and like and that's the thing. Like I'm like I feel like I look fine. Like that's not the issue. But like if I can hold off some wrinkles for a while, like that's the extent of my work.
Me too.
Although I'm still not anti-boob job. I think I might.
Yeah.
But once again, that's like, I think I'm still confident. I just like, oh, that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, I feel
fill
like
out a shirt every once in a while, you know?
Yeah. But you're not doing it for someone else.
No.
Or like, I think that a lot of the intention behind it has to.
And that's where I guess, so my point about all of that isn't really about Botox as much as like for girls especially, like if there's something that like makes them feel more confident, like if that it looks like dyeing your hair purple, like whatever it is, like being okay with that and not like shaming them for, but also not, I don't know, like there's definitely a fine line as far as like, but you want to feel good about yourself and it's like okay to, and especially once you have kids, like with each kid, I feel like I aged so much like more.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But also like, once again, I'm like, just because I am a mom doesn't mean I have to just like give up on myself.
No.
Like it's okay to like want to take time to work out and like make sure I'm taking care of myself and like getting facials if that's what that means or like Botox, whatever. But I feel like it's okay to like want to be up on fashion trends and like put time into like making yourself feel good. Because regardless of how confident you are, it's like you want to look good and feel good.
Yeah.
And that's
I kind of have a perspective. Obviously, I've never had a child, but I have this perspective. I've seen many of my friends have kids and like literally the sacrifice you give to have a child and like keep it alive is more than any other sacrifice like in the world. Like you literally birth a human and then they literally rely on you to live. Like that's crazy. You give up. I mean, think of like all the hormonal changes that you have to go through. You feel like one of our friends right now is pregnant and she's so funny talking about her hormones all the time. Emily.
Like, wait, who's pregnant?
Like this poor thing. She just like feels so emotional or you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, gosh, that's probably like such a whirlwind to be in. And then, so like, that's just one part of it. And then you feel massive by the time you're about to give birth. Yeah.
And then after,
it's like you still, it's not like you pop it out and you're just like, yeah, I'm back to my normal
Some people are those
self and I feel great all the time, or you know what I mean? And then, but then not only that, like you're having, and if you breastfeed, like your body is literally like feeding somebody, like anybody can do whatever they want, but like if you've had a child, like do whatever the F you want to make yourself feel good.
With some exceptions.
Right. I mean,
within the standards of like, but that's where I think that there's such like this stigma or like, it's like, it's almost like you have babies and then you're expected just like, okay, well it was like, a good run. Like you're done with myself.
Yeah.
Instead of like,
but I do think that is like, a generational kind of like we're shifting that like our generation or whatever I don't know when it started, but like my mom, I would say like that was kind of expected of her. Like,
yes,
you have kids and then sorry, you like to work out, but your kid needs you. Your kid has a basketball practice. Yeah. Like you can't do that anymore. Or if you take a bunch of time for yourself, like, oh, that's pretty selfish.
And I think that's where like mom guilt is such a big thing because it's like, ultimately, like you do feel selfish or like feel guilty, like leaving your kids to go on girls' night or like leaving your husband with your kids because you just need time for yourself. And it's like easy to feel like, okay, wait, I should be back there. I should be helping. But like, no. You should be filling your cup.
You should be taking week-long girls' trips.
Yeah, if that's what you need every once in a while, though, like it's okay. Like you're not neglecting your kids for taking time for yourself. And it doesn't mean you love them any less. It just means that you care about like making sure you're fulfilling your needs as well.
Right.
And I think that's okay.
Agreed. It makes you a better mom.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I feel.
I have one more quote on here, which is like kind of a funny one, but I feel like it was something we were talking about earlier. It's from what's the
Cinderella Story.
A Cinderella Story with Hilary Duff. I love
I loved that movie.
Oh, me too.
With Chad Michael Murray. Do you know how I met Chad Michael Murray?
I do remember this.
We were in New York and
I met the same time you saw Trump.
Donald Trump. I have a picture with both of them. Well, not at different times. So it was like my dad and I went to New York and I don't remember how old I was, like maybe 12 or something, maybe 13. I don't know. And we were at like a show, on a Broadway show, and we saw Chad Michael Murray and Sophia Bush. They were married at the time. And I got a picture with him. And it was during the time of like One Tree Hill, though. So he was like hot stuff. And my sisters like would have One Tree Hill parties. So I was like, haha.
Funny.
But it's like he was wearing this like sideways hat and like so swaggy. I think he's like on the phone in the picture. And then I have another picture at the Trump Tower or whatever with Donald Trump. And he's, it's comical.
That is funny.
the quote, though.
The quote.
Don't let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game.
Yes. And that one I just thought was funny because we had talked about earlier how Kenz and I are very similar in like, if we want to do something, we like literally don't even think about it and we'll just do it.
Yeah. Like starting a podcast or like for me, starting photography or you doing like investment properties. It's kind of like, we don't really overthink.
We don't like sit there and make a plan of how we're going to do it. Like, and there's nothing in our head that's like failure. I just like don't even think about. Like, I'm just like,
we got this. We're going to make it happen. We're going to do it. And I think though that's even, I think, a good topic within identity too. Because I think it's like, if you want to start something, I think fear can like hold you back. But I think it's important to like, be like, no, I'm going to go try this out. Even if I fail, like, whatever, it's still me like finding the path of like who I am and like what I'm into and
what I like,
things that make me happy.
Yeah.
But I do think that's like a good quote, actually. I like that quote. It's cute.
It's like the turning point in the movie. She's like scrubbing the floor.
Yeah. I need to watch that.
I know.
I think the kids watched it one time, actually. I used to love it. But yeah, no, I think it's important to like, and we don't really think it through like, we just don't really think through stuff. It's kind of like, if we're going to do it, like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
It's not like, let's think about it for 6 months and then revisit. It's like, no. But that's how I am like with shopping too. Like,
yeah, everything's just like go, go, go.
Or like, like my sisters would always be like, I don't know if I like this. Do you think I should get this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is cute. Buying it.
Yeah.
Which also gets you into trouble sometimes, but
just like different type of thinking pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. Any last things? I feel like there's something else I was going to say on here, but I can't remember what it was. About something random. I don't know.
I can't remember. Or I have no idea.
It's okay. But yeah. Well, if there's nothing else, I think that's it. You feel strong in your identity that this is
the end of
the end of the episode.
The episode, yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us on the Effortless Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Effortless Podcast, and don't forget to follow us on the IG, Instagram. We will talk in 2 weeks. Bye.